on behalf of IGC and R3. This panel consists of an august gathering of people who have been at the helm of policy making for several decades. They have diverse experiences from administration, politics, and journalism. And today we hope to have a stimulating discussion on Shri N.K. Singh's book, Portraits of Power. So I would just quickly introduce our panelists. Shri N.K. Singh, he is a prominent Indian economist, academician, and policy maker. He is currently the chairman of the 15th Finance Commission. He was also a member of the Upper House of Parliament between 2008 and 2014. And apart from that, he has held several very important posts in the government, such as Secretary, Secretary to the Prime Minister of India, while also holding positions in the Planning Commission. He was also a core group of advisors and strategists during India's economic reforms of 1991. We also have with us today Shri Harivansh Narayan Singh, who is an Indian journalist and politician and who is the Deputy Chairman of the Rajya Sabha, the upper house of the Indian Parliament. He has been an eminent journalist in Bihar and Jharkhand. He started his career as a sub-editor in Dharmyug and went on to work in publications such as Ravivar and Prabhat Khabar. He later became the chief editor of Prabhat Khabar. We have Sushil Kumar Modi ji, who has been the Deputy Chief Minister and Finance Minister of Bihar till recently. He has had his history in the students' movement and he rose in ranks of the BJP through the students' wing, that is the Akhil Bharatiya Vidyarthi Parishad. Between 83 and 86, he was the All India General Secretary of ABVP. He contested and won an assembly election from Patna Central in 1990 and was re-elected in 95 and 2000. He has been also a leader of opposition, and in Nitish Kumar's government, he has held the position of Deputy Chief Minister and as Finance Minister. So today, all of us are together to talk about this book, which traces Shri N.K. Singh's life, which is interwoven with India's economic and political history. The book talks about his roots and his family, and then we get a glimpse of the years where he was involved in policy making at the top level. The book also talks about his role as a parliamentarian and future directions for India and Bihar. Shri N.K. Singh ji is well known to all of us, those of us who have been in Bihar and grown up here. To us, he is sort of the very definition of the Bihari elite, known for his opulence and his excellent oratory skills. However, only while reading the book, it gave us a peek into the deep academic roots that he has, and it gives us sort of an account of all the hard work that has gone into this successful person that he is today. It is full of interesting anecdotes and personal experiences, which makes it a very fascinating read. And in this panel discussion today, we hope to bring to the forefront some of these. I don't need to talk a lot. I would give an opportunity for the panelists to continue from here. So I request Shri N.K. Singh ji to say a few words about the book, and then we will start our round of questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you for those warm words of introduction. And thank you, all of you, for joining me today for this webinar on my autobiography, Portraits of Power, Half a Century of Being at Ringside. First and foremost, I'd like to thank the Asian Development Research Institute and the International Growth Center for this opportunity to speak to you today. I'm grateful to Shaibal Gupta, and whom I miss greatly today. I'm equally grateful to Kumar Das for having organized this event, and of course to Ashmita Gupta for moderating today's webinar. Thank you, Ashmita, for agreeing to do so. Second, I'd like to thank our distinguished panelists, Shri Harbansh Narayan Singh, the Deputy Chairman of the Rajya Sabha. Having been a member of the Rajya Sabha, I can tell you that this is an onerous responsibility which he is discharging with ease, confidence, and his sense of tolerance. To Sushil Kumar Modi ji, the former Deputy Chief Minister of Bihar and Bihar's Finance Minister, for perhaps the longest period that anyone has served as a Finance Minister in independent Bihar, and now a newly minted Member of Parliament in the Rajya Sabha. Sushil ji brings to him an enormous experience of complicated matters of finance and taxation. We know this by the key role which he played, not only as chairman of the specialized councils on the implementation of the VAT, but now a key role which he played very recently in the implementation of the GST as a key member of the GST Council. My book, Portraits of Power, is an autobiography. It is not a biography. It covers a wide spectrum of issues ranging from India's agrarian economy, the struggle during independence, our initial trauma, the far-reaching economic reforms of 1991, the issues of foreign trade, its evolution, and finally, to the progressive deregulation of the Indian economy. In a sense, therefore, this is a kaleidoscope. A broad framework has been determined from the angle from which I'm looking at this kaleidoscope. The accounts in this autobiography may not be filled with devastating candor or devastating truth, but rather the opposite. Indeed, I have strived to see the better side of human nature and to understand the compulsions of the people who took the decision. It was the American philosopher Noam Chomsky, a well-known person, who said that optimism is a strategy, which is a strategy for making a better future. Because unless you believe that the future can be better, you are unlikely to step up and take the responsibility for making it so. My autobiography is filled with the same sense of optimism in which I have sought to see the good in every individual and policy and the opportunity in every difficulty. The book recounts my life's journey starting from my roots after all. The first line of my book says, migration has always been a catalyst for change. My book begins by recounting the experiences of a simple peasant family in Bihar, having traced my ancestral history from Rajasthan to Bihar in around 1770. My maternal grandfather, Maul Babu, one of the most affluent zamindars of North Bihar, was in diametrically opposite to my paternal grandfather, Jagannath Prasad Singh, a modest man who excelled in his educational pursuits. This got passed on to my father, late Tribhuvan Prasad Singh, emphasizing the importance of education during the colonial period. My father also coincidentally attended the prestigious London School of Economics and Political Science before competing in the ICS. This very juxtaposition between my maternal and the paternal side of my family brings out the contradictions between the more affluent families of North Bihar, in which I was partly brought up. In my initial years of public office, I'd witnessed the progressive evolution of a highly controlled economy during my father's period. More specifically, I had witnessed and participated in the throes of the economic crisis of 1991. During the same period, I was also privileged to be part of India's economic reform program, which began with the opening up of the Indian markets, the progressive evolution of India's trade policy, and increasing liberalization being pursued in different walks of life. Having worked in the Prime Minister's office as secretary to the Prime Minister Mr. Vajpayee, I did get to play an active role in some groundbreaking initiatives. One such was the telecom revolution, ushering the new internet age for India. Others included the improvement in the road connectivity during the formation of the Golden Quadrilateral and the reassertion of India as a nuclear power, ushering India's new Indo-US partnership. Over the next few decades, I would also get to witness the dismantling of the Planning Commission, of which I was a member, as it overreached its utility. From there, I immersed myself thereafter in the work of trying to pay back to my home state of Bihar. After this, I was privileged to serve as a member of the Rajya Sabha for 6 years from 2008 to 2012. Over the last few years, I have got an amazing opportunity to work with the present government, having participated and chaired the FRBM Act, and thereafter the challenging responsibility of the chairman of the 15th Finance Commission. The final chapter of my autobiography deals with the current COVID-19 pandemic, which perhaps brings the story to a full circle in one simple thought. Is the pandemic a 1991 moment in pressing the reset button and rewriting the social contract? The next step are going to be more pervasive use of technology and artificial intelligence in the nature and shaping of our economic and social fabric. Moreover, as we enter this new year, 2021, and as the world opens up in the wake of this pandemic, we will need a major restructuring on the economic front. More importantly, this will be an opportune moment for India to realize its growth potential. We must strive and successfully try to complete the unfinished agenda, two most important being banking reforms and some reforms of the factors of production. I must mention here that I have devoted a whole chapter in my book for my tenure of Parliament in the Rajya Sabha. I'm aware that there are two parliamentarians present here today, a newly minted one, Sri Sushil Kumar Modi, and of course, Harvansh Narayan Singh, the Deputy Speaker. This Parliament chapter deals with not only my experience in Parliament, but more importantly, the latter part of this chapter on the need for some changes, parliamentary processes and procedures. Those changes will enable greater accountability of the executive to Parliament. I'm conscious that this event is taking place in Patna. Therefore, I must talk a little bit about Bihar's challenges and the way forward. I've dealt with this extensively in my earlier book, which I jointly wrote with Lord Nicholas Stern of the London School of Economics, called The New Bihar. Bihar, by all indications, still remains at the lowest per capita income. It remains at the bottom of the development pyramids on every conceivable measurable development parameters. I dedicated a chapter in the book towards Bihar's reforms and the need to fine-tune the governance architecture, notwithstanding the amazing progress which Bihar has achieved in multiple segments. This is not to say that Bihar hasn't changed at all. In fact, in the last 10, 15 years, it has changed immeasurably. It has become unrecognizably better in terms of road connectivity, in terms of teledensity, in terms of social parameters like the girl-child education, in multiple other directions. But its key challenges lie in several other areas. First and foremost is in attracting private capital. How can we attract private capital to Bihar? And what has to be done to achieve this ongoing challenge? Moreover, why has the deregulation of India's economy, which began in 1991, why did it bypass Bihar in terms of securing greater private interest? This is the big conundrum which remains to be dealt with. Second, we need to get out of the mindset of public outlays only. We need to adapt to the new psyche in which we are looking at the enhanced role of technology, of artificial intelligence, and of being able to harness what technology has to offer in many social sectors, including and apart from the social sectors in education and health in agriculture. Third, how do we improve the outcomes of public expenditure? This is, in fact, an issue that touches upon the whole of India. But in Bihar, this is especially serious, particularly in physical and social infrastructure. Finally, there is the enigma that where Biharis flourish, Bihar languishes. One way in which we can solve this enigma is by improving Bihar's growth initiatives, in creating jobs, in creating new employment opportunities. Rather than Biharis seeking gainful opportunities in other parts of India, why can't Bihar become an education and a health hub, given its enormous factor endowment in terms of skilled manpower? Bihar has a huge potential and a large gainful opportunity which awaits Bihars. Roosevelt had said that the future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. With that, and in the same spirit, my hope for the future, not only of Biharis, but for Bihar, is to become an important developed state in India. My autobiography has not been merely a recounting of the journey of my life, but also a recounting of the 50 years journey undertaken by India from its nascent stages as a highly regulated economy to the 1991 economic reforms, which have led us where we are today. India has a long way to go, and so do Indians as we seek our new place in the comity of nations and in the search of our penultimate quest. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shri N.K. Singh ji, for this excellent account of your rich experiences put in so succinctly in such a short period of time. We have very little time and there are so many things that we want to touch upon today. So I'll just quickly get into this series of question answers, and I hope I'm able to do justice to this entire range of topics that you have exposed us to. So my first round of questions is based upon your growing up years and the Bihar connection. Like you said that you have already mentioned a lot of things that I wanted to ask you about, but let me just come back to some of these. Like, for example, you already mentioned about the diverging experiences or diverging influences of your paternal and maternal grandparents. From reading this book, I get this impression that you have had, you've got a lot of influences in your life which have helped you throughout your long and illustrious career, be it academics or your taste in cultural music, your interest in roses, which you got from your father, painting and art. You seem to be the perfect example of what my father always refers to as a Renaissance person, and which is very strikingly different from the people that we have in this generation who are very focused, and they do not know, they are so highly specialized that they hardly know anything outside their direct area of interest. For example, we know that these days kids are taught coding right from class 8 onwards, or maybe from the age of 8, I think. And many believe that this is the reason for the lack of understanding about issues outside their immediate area of interest. Would you like to talk about how your diverse influences, or rather the extracurriculars, helped you in your work?
Difficult question to address, But let me just make a very brief comment. I would like other panelists to. Let me briefly say that that was the age of dilettantes. This is the age of the dexterous. Having acquired some degree of domain knowledge in economics, and a reasonable one at that, I pursued what would be a wide variety of interests in an age which was different. That was the age, as I said, described as the age of the dilettantes. This is an age of the dexterous, in which your narrow skills, pursuit of scientific quest, and the pursuit of a data computation, and the ability to be able to harness what technology has to offer, has altered our approach in life. Both have their place, but both are designed to suit the challenges of those times as compared to today's challenges, which are significantly different.
Thanks, N.K. Singh ji. Now, let me come to Shri Sushil Modi ji. You have been at the helm of policy making in Bihar, and before this, you've been active in Bihar politics for a long time, right from student days. It is believed that the legacy of this 150-year-old land tenure system still lingers in Bihar. From N.K. Singh ji's book, we get a glimpse of the lack of cultural awareness in Bihar. Again, coming back to the same thing, for example, he gives this example where there was a concert of Kishori Amonkar, which was interrupted by the crowd in Bihar because they preferred to hear Manoj Tiwari instead. So, do you think that this has deep linkages to the lack of social movement and Bihar's inability to sort of move out of agriculture?
First of all, I must thank IGC and Atri for organizing this webinar. And I can only say that I've only read 60% of this book till now, because I could not get that much of time to go through all the pages of this book. And I must thank Nandu Babu, because we all of lovingly call him Nandu Babu. And when we read this book, we know many things about Bihar also. One thing he has mentioned in his book is a maternal grandfather, Maul Babu, who was one of the biggest landlord of Bihar. And he has mentioned that when Maul Babu was passing through Purnia with Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, you have mentioned in that book, जब वो कार से जा रहे थे, तो Pandit Nehru asked Maul Babu, whose land is this? He told, it is mine. Then after 15-20 minutes, again he asked, whose land is this? He told, this is mine. Again after half an hour, he asked, whose land is this? Maul Babu told, this land is mine. And then we came to know that Pandit Nehru, when he went back to New Delhi, this Land Ceiling Act, this came, it may be going on in his mind earlier also. But after seeing that people having 1,000 acres of land, and this idea of this land ceiling came or triggered in his mind after meeting Maul Babu. So these very interesting anecdotes and many of the things we came to know about Bihar also from this book of Nandu Babu. But I must tell you what you have mentioned about Kishori Amolkar's program, because I still remember Nandu Babu was sitting there. It is not that Bihar is lacking in cultural moorings and other things, but because it was not a concert in a way in some hall or a small gathering. I think more than 20,000 of people were there at Patna Gandhi Mela. And it was about 11:30 in the night or 12 o'clock in the night. And it was mostly the youngsters. And when Kishori Amolkar came, and because everybody is not interested in classical music, so some people started hooting her. And in her anger, she left the stage. And then Nitish ji asked Nandu Babu, I didn't knew that she has come only because of on interest of N.K. Singh ji. Then he went to the hotel and he requested her to come again. And you will be surprised to know, हरिवंश हो, आपको आज जानकर आश्चर्य होगा कि सुबह 6 बजे और ये तय हुआ कि एसके मेमोरियल हॉल में देयर विल बी कॉन्सर्ट ऑफ किशोरी अमोनकर जी. एंड वी आर वेरी, हम लोग परेशान थे कि सुबह 6 बजे किसी को पता भी नहीं है तो लोग कैसे इकट्ठा होंगे. और गांधी मैदान में सुबह 4 बजे तक प्रोग्राम चलता रहा. एंड वी वर सरप्राइज्ड व्हेन वी went to SK Memorial Hall. More than 200 people, and all of them relished that classical music in SK Memorial Hall. तो ये नहीं, और मुझे लगता है कि अगर किशोरी अमोनकर जी का कार्यक्रम इस प्रकार का अगर दिल्ली में भी होता, पंजाब में भी होता, बंगाल में भी होता, तो लोग शायद रात को 12, साढ़े 12 बजे और इस तरह के क्लासिकल म्यूजिक के प्रोग्राम को शायद पसंद नहीं करते. तो ये बात ठीक है कि बिहार के अंदर बिहार इज नॉट प्रोड्यूस अ सिंगल सोशल रिफॉर्म इन द लास्ट 300 or 400 years, like Bengal or Maharashtra or Kerala. You have Narayan Guru, Bhimrao Ambedkar. He was not only a political activist, he was a social reformer as well. या बंगाल के अंदर राजा राम मोहन राय से लेकर एक सीरीज ऑफ लोग थे सोशल रिफॉर्मर. बट बिहार हैज प्रोड्यूस्ड political leaders, but this is true that Bihar has not produced a single social reformer. और उसके परिणाम भी दिखाई पड़ते हैं. तो इसलिए तो एक तो मैं ये कहूँगा, और बिहार के अंदर तो आज से 20 साल पहले ड्यूरिंग दुर्गा पूजा, वी हैड ड्यूरिंग दुर्गा पूजा दशहरा एट ऑल द इम्पोर्टेंट राउंडअबाउट्स ऑफ पटना, मछुआ टोली, खजांची रोड, नया टोला, पूरी रात भर क्लासिकल म्यूजिक का कार्यक्रम हुआ करता था. इसलिए ऐसा नहीं कि बिहार के अंदर क्लासिकल म्यूजिक और कल्चरल चीजों के बारे में, लेकिन बिहार के अपने कुछ लिमिटेशंस रहे हैं और इसलिए मैंने उसका एक जिक्र किया. और एक आपने लैंड टेन्योर का जिक्र किया है, स्टिल लिंगर्स इन बिहार. बिहार के अंदर लैंड रिफॉर्म का कोई काम नहीं हो पाया. और देखिए, मैं उसके विस्तार में नहीं जाऊंगा उसके बारे में. और मुझे भी याद है कि जो बंदोपाध्याय कमेटी की जो रिपोर्ट आई थी, आफ्टर दैट वी डिसाइडेड दैट वी विल प्रोवाइड सम काइंड ऑफ पासबुक टू द रैयत्स, बट टू द बटाईदार्स, टू द गैर रैयत, because the land is being tilled by the bataidars, and the real malik of the land, they are not tilling their land, they are not in agriculture, they are doing some other things, and the bataidars, they are looking after the land. And we thought that we will provide some kind of passbook to the bataidars so they can get benefit of different government schemes, because they are not getting any benefit of the government schemes. But as soon as we thought of providing such kind of passbook, पूरे बिहार के अंदर गांव के अंदर ये प्रचार हो गया कि अब जमीन जो है बटाईदारों के कब्जे में चली जाएगी. पासबुक देंगे तो जमीन बटाईदार लोगों के कब्जे में चली जाएगी. And we could not implement it. Even if we would have tried to implement it, there would have bloodshed in Bihar, because only it came in the newspapers. The government of thinking by a sheer whisper campaign, बिहार के अंदर इतना इस तरह का माहौल बन गया. So it is very difficult in a place like Bihar to implement land reforms. But I must thank Mr. Nitish Kumar. In the last 5 years, we are purchasing paddy from the bataidars also, and we are providing all the benefits of the state government scheme of the agriculture department to the bataidars or the gathering. So to that extent we have been able to succeed. लेकिन जो आपने बात कहा कि ये लैंड रिकॉर्ड्स को अपडेट करना, इट इज अ लॉन्ग लेगेसी. और अभी बिहार के अंदर लैंड रिकॉर्ड्स की अपडेटिंग का भी जो है काम चल रहा है. और आपने क्लास में एक क्वेश्चन, Bihar's inability to move out of agriculture. See, Nandu Babu has not mentioned about the division of Bihar in his book. Because see, prior to 2000, when Bihar and Jharkhand were combined Bihar, Jharkhand part was known for its industries, for mines, minerals, industries. And whatever investment came to Bihar, it came in the southern part of Bihar, that is the Jharkhand part of Bihar. And the present Bihar was at that time also considered for agriculture only. So ये जो part है बिहार का, ये agriculture से related ही ये पूरा, इसलिए जब बिहार की बात करते हैं, इसलिए investment, manufacturing, industries, they came in the mind central part of Bihar, and whatever happened, that happened in the rest of Bihar, that was agriculture. So मैं आगे जो क्वेश्चन आएगा तो मैं इसके बारे में चर्चा करूंगा कि बिहार क्यों नहीं निकल पा रहा है एग्रीकल्चर से बाहर, इसके क्या क्या इसके कॉन्स्टेंट्स हैं. So in the next question, in another questions, I will try to answer that question.
Thank you, Shri Modi ji, for giving such a detailed answer to my question. Actually, I just gave this example of Kishori Amonkar as an example. My broader point was this. I mean, it's not that there is not those people who appreciate music do not exist in Bihar. They do exist, but it has not become a mass movement like you yourself said in other parts of India. Maybe coming back to Harivansh ji, you have been an eminent journalist in Bihar and Jharkhand. You have been active in the literacy movement, and you have also been collaborated with my father on several accounts. So I know this firsthand that during the literacy movement brought out the rich folk culture in Bihar. But however, it all got it never took that eminence. And overall, the image of Bihar and a group of Bihari people as a group, that is largely negative. What do you think that, what are the reasons for that? And together with this, I'm just asking my question to all the panelists that all the three questions were related in such a way that the image of the Bihari elite, like when we think of a Bihari, the typical image comes out to be a very rustic person who talks in a certain way. But I wanted to bring out this point because while looking at N.K. Singh's book or reading about his life, we get an idea that this is how a typical Bihari elite would look like. But that is not there in national consciousness. And in Bihar, what we see is that caste still remains a primary network and basis of trust in Bihari society. So what do you think are the reasons for this? Thanks. So, I mean, Harivansh ji, आपके लिए पिछला प्रश्न था और जो लास्ट प्रश्न था वो आप तीनों के लिए ही है.
मैं स्मिता जी आभार व्यक्त करना चाहूंगा आपका, आदरी का, और खासतौर से सवाल जी को मैं याद करते हुए, आप श्री N.K. सिंह जी की बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण किताब, मैं उसके बारे में कुछ अलग से कहूंगा, और जहां बहुत ही अनुभवी सुशील जी को सुनने का आपने मुझे मौका दिया. पहले आपके सवाल का बहुत संक्षेप में जो मैं कह सकूं, यह सही है कि बिहार का फॉल्क कल्चर बहुत रिच है, ट्रेडिशंस बहुत रिच हैं, लिटरेसी मूवमेंट में हम सब रहे, लेकिन उस ढंग की इमेज बाहर हमारी नहीं बन पाती. पर इक्वली ये सही है कि हमारी जो पॉलिटिकल कॉन्शियसनेस रही है 1857 ऑनवर्ड्स टिल जेपी मूवमेंट, वो अपने ढंग की बिहार की कॉन्शियसनेस देश में यूनिक है. और कहते हैं कि ये पॉलिटिकल कॉन्शियसनेस जो बिहार के गांवों में चाय की दुकानों पर आपको मिलेगी, वो देश के किसी और हिस्से में नहीं मिल सकती. ये सुशील जी ने सही कहा कि बंगाल और महाराष्ट्र में एक वो सोशल रेनेसां का मूवमेंट रहा, वो एक अलग माहौल, बिहार में वह नहीं हो सका. हमारे यहाँ स्वामी सहजानंद सरस्वती से लेकर सारी चीजें हुई हैं, राहुल शंकरदयाल जैसे लोग भी हमारे यहाँ हुए. पर बिहार, जिसके बारे में बहुत अच्छी तरह से श्री N.K. सिंह जी ने, नंदू बाबू ने अपने किताब में ही कहा, एक सवेर दिया है, इनिग्मा, बिहारी ने इनिग्मा, तो ये है. और ये सही है कि कास्ट की हमारी जो पहचान है, आइडेंटिटी है, वो बहुत किन्हीं कारणों से हम जिन्हें सोशल रिफॉर्म के द्वारा जिनका असर कम करना चाहिए था, वो कर पाने में अभी तक कामयाब नहीं हो सके. लेकिन इतना ही सही है कि 2005 के बाद ये बिहार बदला कैसे. आप देखें कि पहली बार बिहारी आइडेंटिटी की बात, बिहारी साइकी में पूरे देश में 2005 की बात आना शुरू हुआ। जिस बिहार को डेवलपमेंट इंडेक्स में सबसे पीछे माना जाता था, सबसे पीछे रहता था, वही बिहार 2005 के बाद, वो शायद 2011 में एक रिपोर्ट आई थी जिसमें विवेक देबरॉय और लवलीश भंडारी, स्वामीनाथन अय्यर की रिपोर्ट थी, मैं नाम याद कर रहा था, शायद इकोनॉमिक फ्रीडम ऑफ स्टेट्स ऑफ इंडिया कुछ ऐसा। उसमें जिस बिहार को माना जाता था कि वह देश पर बोझ था अपने ग्रोथ रेट, वो हिंदू ग्रोथ रेट की बात मैं नहीं कह रहा हूं, बहुत पोस्ट 91 भी उसका ग्रोथ रेट बहुत कम रहा, उस कारण बोझ था, वही 2005 के बाद कैसे उसका ग्रोथ रेट देश के अन्य राज्यों के मुकाबले भी सबसे फास्टेस्ट हुआ। तो उस तेज ग्रोथ रेट ने देश के एवरेज ग्रोथ रेट को आगे बढ़ाया। तो उस रिपोर्ट में उल्लेख था कि जो बिहार पहले बोझ माना जाता था वो देश को आगे ले जाने लगा। ये बिहार में पोटेंशियलिटी है। आप जानते हैं कि बिहार के साथ, जिसका सुशील जी ने बहुत अच्छी तरह से कहा, 52 ऑनवर्ड्स पॉलिसी मेकिंग में किस तरह से डिस्क्रिमिनेशन हुआ, ये साफ दिखाई देता है। 52 ऑनवर्ड्स, शायद उसके 7-8 वर्षों बाद सच्चिदानंद सिन्हा की बड़ी रिमार्केबल किताब हम लोगों ने देखी बहुत बाद के वर्षों में, बिहार एन इंटरनल कॉलोनी। उसके बाद बीमारू राज्यों का आपने सुना, कैसे बिहार बीमारू राज्यों में गिना जाने लगा। अंततः 2005 के बाद, और ये क्रेडिट भी जिस टीम को जाते हैं उसमें श्री एनके सिंह जी की बड़ी इंपॉर्टेंट भूमिका रही, स्पेशल कैटेगरी स्टेट्स की, आदरी की, सहवाल जी की, हमारे बाकी तो आगे बढ़ाने वाले नीतीश जी और हमारे सुशील मोदी जी हैं ही। तो ये सारी चीजें जो फ्रेट इक्वलाइजेशन को लेकर बिहार के साथ जो डिस्क्रिमिनेशन हुआ और कैपिटल इन्वेस्टमेंट नहीं हुआ। और कहने जाए तो जो सवाल जी कहते हैं कि जमींदारी सिस्टम का होना, लैंड रिफॉर्म करना होना, एक किस्म का फ्यूडल अप्रोच, जो बहुत अच्छी तरह से सिंह साहब ने अपनी किताब में जिसका उल्लेख किया है, और कहीं ना कहीं वो साइकी हमें लगता है जो एक चेंज के प्रति हमारे यहां थोड़ा लगता है कि उस ढंग से जैसे देश आगे बढ़ सका, हमें वो माहौल 2005 के पहले नहीं मिला, और शायद वो मिला होता तो हम बहुत आगे बढ़े होते। एक और वजह, जब मैं बिल्कुल एक ग्रास रूट विद्यार्थी के रूप में, गांव से निकले विद्यार्थी के रूप में देखता हूं, तो 74 के आसपास मुझे बैंगलोर पहली बार जाने का मौका मिला एनसीसी कैडेट के रूप में। तो मैंने वहां देखा महात्मा गांधी रोड पर लड़कियां स्कूटर चला रही हैं। उस एक चीज का सिग्निफिकेंस मुझे बाद में समझ आया कि किस तरह से हमने औरतों को या समाज में बाकी फ्यूडल चीजों को कायम रखा, जिससे हम आगे नहीं बढ़ सके। अपने एजुकेशनल इंस्टीट्यूशन से बहुत हमारे बेहतर थे, साइंस कॉलेज, पटना यूनिवर्सिटी, अंततः सेंटर ऑफ एक्सलेंस इंस्टीट्यूशन ही समाज को आगे ले जाते हैं। उनकी बुनियाद हमारे मैनेजमेंट, IIT सब 2005 के बाद पढ़ना शुरू हुआ, लॉ का। तो इंस्टीट्यूशन का न बनना, उस लीगेसी को जो मिली थी पटना यूनिवर्सिटी से साइंस कॉलेज में, उसको आगे न बढ़ाना, उसके बहुत सारे कारण हो सकते हैं। शायद इसीलिए वो जो थॉमस फ्रीडमैन की जो किताब बहुत बार पढ़ी, द वर्ल्ड इज फ्लैट, तो बैंगलोर में वहां नई चीजें होती हैं, हमारे यहां पहुंचने में ये समय लगता है। पर एक सवाल में मतलब आपके माध्यम से शायद इनके सिंह जी उसका बहुत अच्छा उत्तर दे सकते हैं। उन्होंने एक बहुत सुंदर प्रसंग उल्लेख किया है कि फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर के रूप में मनमोहन सिंह जी उनसे 2 सवाल प्रायः पूछा करते थे। पहला कि बिहार में इतने टैलेंटेड लोग हैं, बिहार के बाहर वो काम करते हैं, बिहार में आते हैं तो क्यों कुछ नहीं कर पाते, और दूसरा कि बिहार जब तक नहीं बढ़ेगा देश नहीं बढ़ेगा। और उन्होंने इनके सिंह जी ने बहुत सुंदर ढंग से लिखा कि उनकी 3 पॉलिसीज ने कैसे देश को बदला। तो मैं पढ़ रहा था पुस्तक में, एक खासतौर से वाजपेयी जी के जमाने में जब वो सेक्रेटरी के रूप में काम कर रहे थे, पेज 174-75 पर है ये, गोल्डन क्वाड्रिलेटरल नेशनल हाईवे। सड़कों के इतिहास ने, सड़कों के निर्माण में कैसे देशों का इतिहास बदला है, कभी मैंने किसी दूसरे देश के संदर्भ में पढ़ा था। दूसरा, उसी रूप में उन्होंने टेलीकॉम पॉलिसी, पहली बार रेवेन्यू शेयरिंग मॉडल पर टेलीकॉम पॉलिसी हमारे यहाँ। आज जो हम लोगों को घर घर फोन है, इसका क्या असर पड़ा है, जब मैं अपने एक वैसे व्यक्ति के रूप में सोचता हूं जो ऐसे गांव से निकला जिसको पटना पहुंचने, बनारस पहुंचने में 2 दिन का वक्त लगता था नदियों से घिरा होने के कारण। तो आज जब 97 में फ्रांसिस कर्मक्रॉस की जो पुस्तक थी द डेथ ऑफ डिस्टेंस, वो पढ़ा मैंने, तो समझ में आया कि क्या इन दोनों पॉलिसीज का अर्थ देश के लिए है। पर हमारे यहाँ बिहार में इतने टॉप सिविल सर्वेंट्स रहे, जिसमें आदरणीय सिंह साहब के परिवार के रिश्ते, जिनसे बहुत, खुद पिताजी बड़े यशस्वी थे, LK झा साहब भागलपुर से थे, उसका उल्लेख भी है कि कैसे करीबी रिश्ता रहा, LP सिंह जी। पर ये लीजेंडरी ब्यूरोक्रेट्स हमारे देश में जाकर पॉलिसी मेकिंग में इतना बड़ा काम कर सके। बिहार में भी रहे बहुत सारे लोग, पर बिहार में पॉलिसी लेवल पर 2005 के पहले शायद इस रूप में बड़े चेंजेस जो होने चाहिए थे, वो लगता है मुझे शायद कहीं कोई कमी रह गई। तो ये सवाल मुझे लगता है कि जो ब्यूरोक्रेसी, जिसको डॉक्टर लोहिया कहा करते थे कि परमानेंट किंग, स्थायी राजा शब्द हिंदी में बोलते थे कि ब्यूरोक्रेसी है, पॉलिटिशियंस आते और जाते हैं, पर एक्चुअल चेंज करने वाले ये लोग हैं। ये बिहार में चेंज ब्यूरोक्रेसी में इतने टॉप, मतलब जिन्हें एक्सेलेंट ब्यूरोक्रेट्स जो कहता है, आउटस्टैंडिंग लोग जो रहे, जिनमें से कई लोग निकलकर नेशनल एकेडमी वगैरह के डायरेक्टर बने और बहुत देश में महत्वपूर्ण जगहों पर गए। वही पॉलिसी लेवल पर इन चीजों में कहीं लगता है 2005 के पहले जिन्हें करना चाहिए था, शायद वैसा कर नहीं पाए। तो ये सारे रीजन्स रहे जिससे मुझे लगता है कि बिहार के बारे में और एक कास्ट टेंशन जो रहा, गवर्नेंस के लेवल पर जो डेफिसिट रहा, और एक जो हमारे लोग खासतौर से 90 ऑनवर्ड्स जो सत्ता में आए, जो एक विजन होना चाहिए देश समाज को। 91 के बाद जो सिंह साहब अपनी किताब में कहते हैं कि जो बड़ा एक चेंज इस देश में आया, हम दुनिया के साथ जुड़े, तो ग्लोबल विलेज हम हिस्सा है, पसंद करें ना करें उसको हम डिफर कर सकते हैं पॉलिसीज को लेकर, लेकिन बाकी देश के हिस्से उससे आगे निकल गए। वह प्रक्रिया बिहार में 2005 के बाद शुरू हुई। तो शायद ये बहुत सारे मल्टीपल रीजंस हैं जिसकी वजह से बिहार की जो चेतना है, नेशनल कॉन्शियसनेस है, बिहार में जो एक बिल्कुल आप कह सकते हैं कि फॉर्मल एजुकेशन न होने के बाद भी जो नेशनल कॉन्शियसनेस बिहार में रहा, वो अद्भुत है। लेकिन बड़ी ये चीजें कास्ट की, लैंड रिफॉर्म का उस वक्त का बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट इशू था ना होना, और शायद वो जमींदारी सिस्टम की जो लीगेसी थी, उसका जो माइंडसेट था, बाहर की पूंजी का ना आना, और आगे के आपके सवाल में कि डेवलपमेंट के लिए सिर्फ पब्लिक सेक्टर लेड मॉडल पर डिपेंड करना, ये शायद बहुत सारी वजह रही। और जो हमारी कोर ताकत थी एग्रीकल्चर डेवलपमेंट के लिए, वो सारा रोड मैप सब कुछ 2005 के बाद शुरू हुआ, उस पर कहां हमने फोकस किया। ये सारी वजहें हैं शायद जिनसे बिहार की जो एक पहचान इलिट की बाहर बननी चाहिए, उसमें उस ढंग से हम अपनी जगह नहीं बना पाए। लेकिन 2005 के बाद ये जगह बहुत तेजी से बन रही है, ऐसा मुझे दिखाई देता है।
NK सिंह जी, आप इस पॉइंट पे कुछ बोलना चाहेंगे? अदरवाइज आई मूव ऑन टू माय नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन, दिस क्वेश्चन अबाउट the missing Bihari elite from national consciousness and caste, और
तो मैं एक दो बहुत संक्षिप्त में कोई टिप्पणी करूं। एक तो हरवंश जी ने उल्लेख किया है कि डॉक्टर मनमोहन सिंह और हमारे बीच बिहार के विकास के बारे में जो वार्तालाप हो रही थी, उसमें हरवंश भाई एक हास्यप्रद विषय भी था। एक दिन राज्यसभा के गैलरी से जब निकल रहे थे, वो प्रधानमंत्री थे और मैं निकल रहा था, तो हम दोनों की आकस्मिक भेंट हुई इनर लॉबी में। तो उन्होंने हमसे एक प्रश्न पूछा कि नंदू, कैन आई आस्क यू अ क्वेश्चन? आई सेड प्लीज। इंडिया कैन नॉट प्रॉस्पर टिल बिहार प्रॉस्पर्स। व्हेन डू यू थिंक दैट दैट इज पॉसिबल विद पीपल ऑफ योर एबिलिटी इन बिहार एंड सो ऑन? और he said people of the same, जिनके आपने वर्णन कर रहे थे हरवंश भाई, बिकॉज मनमोहन सिंह जी मेरे पिताजी के अधीन काम कर रहे थे, वो उनके चीफ इकोनॉमिक एडवाइजर थे जब मेरे पिताजी केंद्र में वित्त सचिव थे। तो खैर मैंने उस समय कुछ नहीं उत्तर मैं दे सका। 2 वर्षों के बाद आप जैसा कह रहे थे हरवंश भाई, बिहार की ग्रोथ रेट हिंदुस्तान की एवरेज ग्रोथ रेट से कहीं ज्यादा बढ़ गई, तो जिसका आपने उल्लेख किया हरवंश भाई। तो मुझे फिर मुलाकात हुई, हमने कहा सर कैन आई हैव अ वर्ड विथ यू? ही सेड यस नंदू। सो आई सेड सर, आई डोंट थिंक इंडिया कैन प्रॉस्पर एट ऑल unless it catches up with Bihar's prosperity. वो समझ गए कि क्या मैंने कहा था, वो हंस पड़े. I know your growth rates in the recent months have been very spectacular. तो मैं हरवंश भाई आपसे सहमत हूं कि अगले 15 वर्षों में एक बहुत बिहार में प्रगति में एक नई विधि आई है. आप रोड को देखें, कनेक्टिविटी, आप सोशल सेक्टर में गर्ल चाइल्ड एजुकेशन के ऊपर जो एम्फेसिस है उसे देखें, और जो कॉन्शियसनेस बढ़ा है उसे देखें. मेरे जानते ये कुछ ही समय में की बात है कि जब हम लोगों के यहाँ भी क्यों बिहारी स्टूडेंट्स बाहर जाके पढ़ेंगे, ये मेरी आकांक्षा रही है. क्या लैक करते हैं हम लोग. तो इन सब चीजों के ऊपर आगे प्रगति होने की आवश्यकता. क्यों नहीं हेल्थ सेक्टर में जितने पैरामेडिक्स हैं, बिहारी वुमेन हैं, वो उनके लिए हम लोग ऐसा व्यवस्था करते हैं कि पैरामेडिकल ट्रेनिंग हो, हेल्थ की इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर में, जिसके बारे में कि मैंने फिनांस कमीशन के अपने रिपोर्ट में बहुत उल्लेख किया है. तो मैं आपसे सहमत हूं हरवंश भाई. और सुशील भाई, एक हास्यप्रद चीज ये है कि आप सही कह रहे थे, यही किशोरी अमोनकर का जो उदाहरण है, यही बिहार का विरोधाभास है. दिस इज द कॉन्ट्रडिक्शन. शाम को भले ही गांधी मैदान में कुछ लोग उनको, किशोरी अमोनकर जी को नहीं सुन करके वो तिवारी जी को सुनना चाहते थे, लेकिन वही बिहार के लोग नेक्स्ट मॉर्निंग पूरे श्री कृष्ण मेमोरियल हॉल में 6 बजे से पिन ड्रॉप साइलेंस में किशोरी अमोनकर को सुने. और चूंकि किशोरी जी नहीं रही, शायद इसका भी मैं उल्लेख कर सकता था किताब में, उन्होंने कहा कि आई नेवर थॉट I will get such an appreciative audience anywhere in India as I got in Bihar from 6 a.m. with jam-packed Shri Krishna Memorial Hall. पिछले शाम को वो हुआ, नेक्स्ट मॉर्निंग ये घटना. तो ये बिहार का ही ऐसा है. बट कल्चरली बिहार के रिचनेस में क्या आपने सही कहा. अगर मैंने इंडियन क्लासिकल म्यूजिक में मुझे कुछ ज्ञान प्राप्त हुआ तो वो वहीं से ज्ञान प्राप्त हुआ जिसका आप सुशील भाई उल्लेख कर रहे थे, जो दुर्गा पूजा के समय बिहार के विभिन्न टोलाओं में और हिंदुस्तान के जितने प्रसिद्ध कलाकार थे वो कह रहे थे मेरा फर्स्ट कमिटमेंट बिहार का है. तो रिवाइवल हुआ नीतीश जी के टाइम में. दैट इज वेरी 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 क्रेडिटेबल. आगे बढ़िए.
ये मिस्टर एनके सिंह हैज आल्सो मेंशन्ड अबाउट आइडेंटिटी पॉलिटिक्स इन बिहार. उसमें उन्होंने एक जिक्र किया है नीतीश जी के रेफरेंस. इट इज नॉट डेवलपमेंट वर्सेस आइडेंटिटी. ड्यूरिंग लालूज रिजिम इट वाज डेवलपमेंट वर्सेस आइडेंटिटी. और लोग कहते थे आइडेंटिटी पॉलिटिक्स ही इंपॉर्टेंट है, डेवलपमेंट की कोई आवश्यकता नहीं है. और जब एनडीए की सरकार बनी तो इट वाज नॉट डेवलपमेंट वर्सेस आइडेंटिटी, इट वाज डेवलपमेंट एंड आइडेंटिटी. सो in a caste-ridden Hindu society, it is not only confined to Bihar, any part of this country. Identity is important. लेकिन नीतीश जी ने आइडेंटिटी और डेवलपमेंट, इस दोनों की सिनर्जी, दोनों को ध्यान में रखकर और काम करने का प्रयास किया. आगे बढ़ सकते हैं.
Thank you to all the panelists for such insightful answers. Now moving on to the section on Indian politics and economics. Since all of you are parliamentarians, I would like to bring this up, and my question is directed to again Shri N.K. Singh ji about this precocious democracy, which was a word which was coined by Arvind Subramaniam, who said that India probably became a democracy too soon, given the level of GDP and literacy and other development indicators compared to other democratic countries. And many times there are certain decisions which need to be taken in the interest of the country, and the parliamentary process sometimes probably delays or stalls them down by its very nature. So I would like to know your views on this, because in your book yourself, when you're talking about the reform period, you have said that it was sort of a reforms undertaken by stealth, because India was already in a crisis situation and we needed to pull everything, pull it out of it, and because of which certain things were done in the way they were done, which you have written now retrospectively. So, what would you like to comment on the nature of democracy in India and where it is headed in the future?
Very frankly, I must tell you that we need more democracy, not less democracy. To one question which was often asked to me by important American economic leaders, that what is it in India? What is it in India which is the biggest assurance to people who invest in your government? I answered that the biggest assurance is, as you look at India's economic history, no decision which has been taken has been reversed. This is because the decisions have been embedded in an overall national consensus and embedded through a democratic process. So I would say that far-reaching economic and social reforms must be embedded as part of a national consensus whose manifestation we see in the interplay of democracy, from the third tier of democracy to state legislatures and to the functioning of parliament. I think that that is one of India's strongest point, and it is a strong foundation as we go forward to complete the important unfinished agenda of economic reforms, which I have brought out in my book, relates to, let us say, to give an example, factors of production of land, labor, capital, on, for instance, in the social sector, in education, and in health. So my short reply is that I do not agree with Arvind Subramaniam that democracy is an impediment. Democracy is the most crucial facilitator if you want to see the sustainability of economic reforms. Who knows more than Raghuvansh Babu what a difficult task it is to manage the dialogue in the Rajya Sabha? And yet, his management and in able to bring and forging a consensus has been the most important guiding factor in which our democratic forces are embedded.
All right. Yeah, I agree with you too, sir, that democracy is what has made India stand out. And if we look at any historical account of India or any history, they will always mention that in the Western world, we were always predicted to be doomed. And I hope that that never happens and our democratic institutions remain intact. Again, coming back to Shri N.K. Singh ji, since I brought up this issue of reforms, let me just ask you in the same light that it was one of the major historic events that India has had, and in my own work, I have looked at the effect of reforms on the manufacturing sector, and that is one area that I feel that that is an area of concern, that our manufacturing sector has not grown the way we had expected possibly. With the coming of IT and the telecom revolution, the direction of the economy moved in another direction, which was a positive thing for India. But then the manufacturing is still sort of a concern for us even now. And while reading your book, this example or this incident was of immense importance, where you talk about this deal which happened between Suzuki and Maruti at that time. It was not only on paper, but it was, according to me, one of the most successful success stories of India, where there was a collaboration, foreign collaboration, and it's one of the main car makers in India now. So why do you think post-reforms we did not see more such successful collaborations?
Well, I would like other panelists to come in. I would like to make just three very brief comments. First and foremost, I do believe by the hindsight, if I may say so, that the false hiatus between manufacturing, services, and the primary sector deserves a second, more fundamental look. It was said that India can be the service and software engine of the world, while China will continue to be the world's manufacturing hub. I disagree with that. I disagree with it because this artificial distinction between manufacturing and services does not stand to reason. If you wish to move in an era of value-added chain to create higher degrees of profitability and higher degrees of productive capacity, that's the first thing. Second, I think that the big factor is, I have mentioned, that for the manufacturing sector to take off, we needed more abiding reforms on factors of production, on land, labor, capital, banking and financial sector, labor, which we all know, and issues of land. So at that time in 1991, the can was only picked down the street. But we have to give credit to Prime Minister Modi that the entire philosophy of Atmanirbhar Bharat is embedded, and the ease of doing business is embedded in his approach of how to ensure greater productivity and viability of India's manufacturing sector. And that this does not mean an Atmanirbhar Bharat, does not mean a protectionist Bharat. It means a Bharat which can generate and harness its own comparative advantages and being able to achieve higher productivity to be able to also become an important exporting power. Our ability to import will be governed by the ability to sustain these imports by creating more and more jobs and the vibrancy of our export activity. So we have now taken very credible steps to reform the factors of production. And I have no doubt that over the coming couple of years, you will see a new revival of India's manufacturing sector. Indeed, India is destined to ride on triple engines: the engine of a growing services sector, the engine of a growing manufacturing sector, and the engine of India's primary and agricultural sector, deriving multiple advantages, among other things, from the increasing use.
Thank you, N.K. Singh ji, for this insight. सुशील मोदी जी, आपसे ये अगला सवाल है। पोस्ट 90s का पीरियड जो कि मीडिया में अक्सर जंगल राज कहा जाता है, एंड लुकिंग at Bihar's growth trajectory, we see that Bihar was unable to reap some of the benefits of reform, and one of the reasons for it was जो आपने बात कही about identity politics, and then it's also linked to my question about the pressures of this democratic system where the political leaders are they have to do certain things in order to win over the electorates that they seek their votes from. So in the post-reform period, we saw the entire whole of India growing, but Bihar was stuck in this low growth process where there was still a large dependence on agriculture, and it led to large-scale out-migration from jobs for low-paying jobs in big cities. When Nitish came, you said, like all the panelists have emphasized, that it was remarkably a change, and for the first time we saw that Bihar's growth trajectory was very different from all of India in 2005. But still, as of now, it is the IT sector that has not made a major inroads into Bihar. And what do you think are the reasons for this? We do not have a dearth of people who are well educated, who can speak English or can be trained in English. But then the IT has not come in Bihar in a big way, even today. What do you think are the reasons for this?
देखिए, बिहार का एक बैकग्राउंड सभी लोगों को ध्यान रखना चाहिए कि राइट फ्रॉम इंडिपेंडेंस टिल 1961, when Sri Babu was the chief minister of Bihar. So that is the only period in which some kind of development took place in Bihar. And Nandu Babu is also mentioned about his father when he was the chief administrator of the Kosi project. So all the big projects, either it is Kosi, Gandak, all these big ticket investments or projects were ये सारे केवल 47 से लेकर 61 तक जब तक श्री बाबू बिहार के मुख्यमंत्री थे, either it is Barauni fertilizer, Barauni refinery, Barauni power plant. After 61, you won't find any kind of change taking place, no development taking place in Bihar from 61 to 2005. और ये 45 years का period है. So it is not that only the jungle are 15 years, right from 1961 to 2005. You will be surprised to know that there were more than 30 chief ministers. And from 61 to 2005, Jagannath Mishra became CM thrice he became CM, but his longest tenure was only for 2 years, 3 months. Bhagwaj Azad, Satyendra Narayan Sinha, Bindusri Dubey, Joe Karpuri ji, जो बने 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, 1 year. यानी 61 के बाद दीप नारायण सिंह, केबी साय, बिरोधन झा, महामाया प्रसाद सिन्हा, जो भी लोग बने बिहार के अंदर मुख्यमंत्री, पासवान जी, यानी जो टेन्यूर था, what was average tenure was only 1 year. और वो मुख्यमंत्री बनते ही उसको हटाने का अभियान प्रारंभ हो जाता था. तो वो मुख्यमंत्री डेवलपमेंट का काम क्या करेगा? इसलिए 61 से लेकर 2005 तक बिहार के अंदर it was a period of no development, so we could not take advantage of any kind of reforms or any kind of benefit of reforms. Either it was in the field of agriculture, Green Revolution, or the 1991 reforms. So we could not take any advantage of all those kind of reforms. So whatever development has started, it was only after 2005. तो अब सोचिए अगर किसी स्टेट को 45 साल का गैप हो जाए डेवलपमेंट का, तो बिहार, और जब 2005 में जब नीतीश कुमार became chief minister, it was very difficult to prioritize the priority. We see, to prioritize the priority, road is important, or electricity is important, or law and order is important, or social sector is important. Everything was important. आज अगर गुजरात की चर्चा करें, they don't care about the roads because they've achieved whatever they wanted in roads. Maharashtra, they've achieved in electricity, they've achieved in many other sectors. But in Bihar, when we started, everything was priority for us. So it was very difficult to prioritize the priority. So whatever development has taken place, it was only after 2005. इसलिए मैं उसके डिटेल में नहीं जाऊंगा, और मैं एक ही बात कहूंगा कि जहाँ तक आपने आईटी सेक्टर की जो बात कही और माइग्रेशन की जो बात कही, see, Nandu Babu has mentioned in his book regarding Kosi, and he wanted that something must happen in the नेपाल एरिया के अंदर और कोई डैम बन सके, उन्होंने भी एफर्ट किया. So the Bihar is the only state in this country which is facing floods each and every year. The rivers are originating from Nepal, and the kind of devastation and the kind of floods we are facing every year, the सारा infrastructure खत्म हो जाता है, roads, bridges, everything is washed away, and there are no jobs because of floods. So large scale of migration from Bihar is because of floods. तो इसलिए मैं उसके डिटेल में नहीं जाऊंगा कि अब रिगार्डिंग आउट माइग्रेशन, और जहाँ तक आईटी सेक्टर की बात है, तो हम पिछड़ गए उसके अंदर. जो समय था, जिस समय बैंगलोर, हैदराबाद, they became the hub of the IT sector, we missed the bus at that time. अब मैं इतना ही कहूंगा कि आज भले ही आईटी सेक्टर में कोई इन्वेस्टमेंट बिहार के अंदर नहीं आया हो, लेकिन बिहार गवर्नमेंट के जो डिपार्टमेंट्स हैं, each and every penny is being transferred into the accounts of the beneficiary through direct benefit transfer. Each and every department has been computerized, and you will be surprised to know that more than 1 crore 30 lakh of farmers have been registered online, and all the benefits given to the farmers. It is not cash loan, each and every और ये सारी चीजें जो हैं उनके अकाउंट्स के अंदर और ट्रांसफर की जाती है। तो मैं इतना ही कहूंगा कि आईटी सेक्टर के अंदर चाहे वो साउदर्न स्टेट्स they could take advantage of the investment in IT sector. And regards the competition of the departments, we have succeeded in that part. लेकिन ये बात है कि इन्वेस्टमेंट जो आना चाहिए था आईटी सेक्टर वो हम चाह कर भी बहुत बिहार के अंदर नहीं ला पाए।
थैंक यू सुशील मोदी जी। हरिवंश जी, आपसे अगला सवाल है कि जैसे आईटी सेक्टर में तो हम पिछड़ गए, लेकिन जब स्टूडेंट्स को देखते हैं तो बहुत से लोग बिहार से हैं जो स्टूडेंट्स इंजीनियरिंग के लिए जाते हैं या फिर मेडिकल के लिए पढ़ाई के लिए जाते हैं, but still we do not see that many private engineering colleges in Bihar. And why do you think is the reason? So I was just coming from my house to Adri today. I saw this big hoarding for Tribhuvan School, which is again, I think a school which was started by N.K. Singhji's daughter. But so at the school level, such great initiatives have started, but we don't see that in engineering colleges or medical schools. Which is a bit of a contradiction, because we have people who can pay. There is a demand for this kind of education, but do you think is it because of lack of entrepreneurship, or what is the thing that is missing in Bihar?
तो मुझे लगता है बहुत अच्छी तरह से माननीय सुशील मोदी जी ने इसका उत्तर दिया है कि कैसे बिहार में जो डेवलपमेंट स्टेट लेड डेवलपमेंट हुआ 61 तक, उसके ऑनवर्ड्स क्या स्थिति रही और उसके बाद हिस्टोरिकल रीजंस क्या रहे। आईटी सेक्टर के बारे में बहुत अच्छी तरह से उन्होंने एक्सप्लेन किया और दूसरी चीजों का। पर 2005 ऑनवर्ड्स जो पॉलिसी डिसीजन होने लगे नए ढंग से, उसका इंपैक्ट आप देखेंगे कि बिहार में मेडिकल कॉलेज सासाराम में, मोतिहारी में, पूर्णिया में और कई जगहों पर आ रहे हैं धीरे धीरे। साथ ही इंजीनियरिंग कॉलेज के लिए भी लोग कोशिश करें, कुछ यूनिवर्सिटीज भी आई हैं। तो एक आप जानती हैं अच्छी तरह से कि एक क्लाइमेट इन्वेस्टमेंट का प्रो फ्रेंडली बनना, इट टेक्स टाइम। किस हालत में बिहार था 2005 के पहले, उसके बारे में तो मतलब ऑलमोस्ट इंटरनेशनल न्यूज़पेपर्स, मैगजीन्स बाकी छोड़ दीजिए देश का, वो मानते थे कि बिहार अनगवर्नेबल है, ये इट्स अ काइंड ऑफ फंक्शनल एनार्की, ये सब एडजेक्टिव से। तो उस स्टेट को ट्रैक पर लाना और प्रायोरिटी को प्रायोरिटाइज करना, वो सही कहा सुशील मोदी जी ने। आप देखें इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर की क्या हालत थी। एक पुल हमारा नॉर्थ बिहार और पटना को जोड़ने वाला था, आज आप देखें किस तरह से कम्युनिकेशन ने, सड़कों ने, पुलों ने, छोटी छोटी जगहों को जोड़ने का काम जो हुआ है बिहार में, रिमार्केबल है। तो इस सारी उससे प्राइवेट कैपिटल आने की और एक माइंडसेट पहले रहा है स्टेट लेड गवर्नमेंट का, स्टेट लेड डेवलपमेंट का, तो उस माइंडसेट को चेंज करने में टेक्स टाइम। और 2005 के बाद वो सारी चीजें हुई और सरकारी प्रयास से भी जितने आप देखें, जिन्हें सेंटर ऑफ एक्सेलेंस कहते हैं, खासतौर से उदारीकरण के बाद 91 के बाद जिस तरह से IIT, IIM या लॉ के अच्छे इंस्टीट्यूशंस खुलने देश के दूसरे हिस्से में शुरू हुए, बिहार में तो उसके बाद शुरू हुआ है सारा कुछ। और बहुत बेहतर इंस्टीट्यूशंस बने 2005 के बाद। आर्यभट्ट यूनिवर्सिटी वहां बनाई गई, सारे नए इनोवेशन के साथ है। आई थिंक कि इंस्टीट्यूशंस बनने में टेक सम टाइम, और बिहार उस रास्ते पर है जहां ये चीजें होंगी। लेकिन एक बड़ी चीज और मैं उल्लेख करना चाहूंगा इस संदर्भ में कि अभी जो नई चुनौती इस डिकेड में जो दिखाई देती है, 2021 से 30 के बीच 10 वर्षों में, आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस इज गोइंग टू चेंज द बेसिक डेवलपमेंट का पैरामीटर। अब उसमें हम कैसे अपना रोल तलाश सके, ये हमें देखना पड़ेगा।
मैं कहना चाहता हूं कि आप जो अभी आपने जो उदाहरणार्थ कहा कि मेरी जो सुपुत्री मीनाक्षी जी हैं, उन्होंने ये पहल किया, शहबाल जी उससे बहुत क्लोजली के एडवाइजर रहे हैं। तो मैं हरवंश जी के और सुशील जी के समर्थन में कहना चाहता हूं कि निश्चित रूप से परिवर्तन 2005 के बाद आया है। उदाहरणार्थ, मेरी डॉटर का स्कूल में कोटा में है, कांगड़ा में खोल रही हैं, और बिहार में तो है ही। उन्होंने अपने अनुभव के बारे में बताया कि अगर मुझे कहीं एजुकेशन सेक्टर में इन्वेस्टमेंट करना होगा, आई विल लाइक टू डू इन बिहार, बिकॉज नॉट बिकॉज आई एम ए बिहारी, बट जो सरकारी प्रणाली में जिस स्पीड से परिवर्तन आया है, द लीस्ट प्रॉब्लम्स आई हैव हैड is in the working of the education institution in Bihar. This is her own personal experience, which she was narrating to me, that people do not understand that it's much easier to set up institutions in Bihar through the governmental process, unlike the mindset that people may have. And if anybody should have a choice between different states, Bihar has got many, many distinct advantages, she said. I can tell you, she told me from her personal experience. Carry on.
Thanks, N.K. Singh ji. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Even, for example, I've spent quite some time in Tamil Nadu, and if you just move out of Chennai, you see like so many engineering colleges. एक पेड़ के नीचे engineering college का board लगा है, and many of Bihari students actually go and study in Chennai, go and they study engineering in Tamil Nadu, and they would rather. So I think there is this great opportunity for development of educational institutions in Bihar, because the demand exists, the government is there, and all the institutions are in place. Coming back to you again, I just want to quickly ask you that since you have been the deputy chairman of BSPB, that kick-started the movement, movement around the public-private partnerships in Bihar. Would you like to say something about that experience, and how does that help in an agricultural state like Bihar to move forward?
I would say that the agricultural initiatives in Bihar have been very productive. Let us not forget that there are many, many areas, potato, corn, brinjal, to give you a few examples, in the area of fishiculture, where in the agricultural sector, Bihar has made very significant progress in the recent years. Also, I would say that agro and agro-based industries, Bihar has a huge comparative advantage over many other parts of the country. How to get more private capital into the agriculture sector will be challenging. Public-private partnership is a way forward. And I think that I would recommend to the government of Bihar that if they have Dr. Vijay Kelkar, who had set up the framework for public-private partnership, has suggested a law in every state which relates to public-private partnership. Maybe Bihar could really seek that kind of an approach.
Thank you. Related to this, I just want to quickly come to this section of Finance Commission and challenges. And we see that there are a lot of people who are eager to ask questions. So I don't want to be like really selfish and ask all the questions myself. I would just address this question to Shri N.K. Singh ji to highlight some of the key challenges that you came across as your role as the chairman of 15 Finance Commission while carrying out the reconciliation activity between diverse nature of the states in India, particularly of dividing the resource pool among center and states and in the horizontal split among all states.
Well, I don't want to talk about the Finance Commission too much because we have submitted the report. The first one to see this will be, along with the action taken report, our report will be Harvansh ji in the Rajya Sabha and Birla ji in the Lok Sabha, and all along with the action taken report. But I'll give a very brief answer that the challenge, the principal challenge of the Finance Commission was two. First, how do you balance equity with efficiency? How to make sure that while providing adequate resources based on considerations of equity, where the poorest of the states must receive a reasonable share in terms of the outlays which are needed, along with how to reward states which have used the resources very purposefully. For instance, the classic example being the improved demographic management of some of the southern states, and where we had to use population as a formula based on the 2011 census. Harmonizing need, equity, and efficiency is one principal challenge, and it has we have used our best judgment in trying to seek reconciliation. Second is the issue of differential and differentiated approach. Namely, will, for instance, some of the smaller economies, and it has been quite a learning experience for me when I write the book on the Finance Commission or on the federal architecture, I will bring those things out. But for instance, the Northeast states, Bihar's population is, we know what it is. Uttar Pradesh's population, we know what it is. The population of many states in Bihar, in the Northeast, is a very small population. And they feel that because we are a small state, will we be neglected? Or for instance, the challenges of maintaining the infrastructure in the Himalayan states of Uttarakhand and in Himachal, where with each monsoon, with each landslide, a lot of the infrastructure gets washed away. So how do we adopt a differential and differentiated approach, which is state-specific, looking at the needs and obligations of the government in the third? And third, how do you optimize a path of macroeconomic stability on fiscal deficits, on debt, which apply to the general government, which means to the center and the states, in a non-discriminatory manner. And non-discriminatory includes also balancing the demands of the union with balancing the demand of the states, because in the cover page of the Finance Commission's report, I have the two scales, which is the scale of the states and the scale of the union government. We had received 29 submissions, one on behalf of the union government and 28 on behalf of the 28 states. And how do you really have the scales in that, which are evenly balanced based on the considerations, equity, efficiency, and needs?
Thanks, J.N.K. Singh ji. So I'm tempted to ask Sushil Modi ji now, being on the other side, since you were a deputy CM of Bihar and you were also the finance minister, when it comes to receiving the resources from this divisible pool, being on the other side, what is the state's perspective? I would like you to highlight the state's perspective in sharing resources, not only in getting the resources, but also in sharing resources to the next level, to the third tier of government.
देखिए, जहाँ तक फाइनेंस कमीशन की बात है, I would say that Bihar is benefited most by the finance commission's recommendations, because Bihar is dependent upon union government's revenue, and we receive more than 70%, more than 70% of revenue of the state government in Bihar comes from the union government. So the finance commission's recommendations are very important. और मैं ये कह सकता हूँ कि फाइनेंस कमीशन के साथ दिक्कत ही होती है कि जैसा भी कहा कि इक्विटी एंड एफिशिएंसी के बीच में एक बैलेंस बैठाना. So how to balance between Kerala or Tamil Nadu and Bihar and Eastern UP or Bengal or Odisha? So it becomes very difficult. और जो क्राइटेरिया फिक्स होता है, उस क्राइटेरिया में कुछ क्राइटेरिया में किसी स्टेट का एडवांटेज मिल जाता है. When they put some marks, more marks for the forest area, then Uttarakhand get advantage, Jharkhand gets advantage. Regarding demography, Bihar gets advantage, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka at the disadvantage. So to reality is very difficult to strike a balance between the between the developed states like the southern and western states and poorer states like the eastern part of India. लेकिन मैं कह सकता हूँ देखिए प्रॉब्लम क्या आती है. So I don't know what he is going to recommend, Mr. N.K. Singh ji. I think by before budget, I think that report will be out before that budget, before this budget. Nandababu?
I believe it will be placed with the budget.
With the
budget, because the budget has to recognize the recommendations which we have made and take a view on those recommendations. The government has to have action taken report on each of the recommendations made. And this time our recommendations there are over 100 recommendations, to give an example, which covers a very wide area, because the report itself is in 4 volumes. Anyway.
Oh. मैं ये कह रहा था कि सेंट्रल टैक्सेस, स्टेट सेंट्रल टैक्सेस, इसका सबसे ज्यादा बेनिफिट मिला स्टेट्स को. बट रिगार्डिंग centrally sponsored schemes and other schemes, poor states like Bihar, they are not able to take maximum advantage of centrally sponsored schemes. For example, regarding the urban and the Panchayati Raj institutions, a large chunk of revenue comes for the urban local bodies and the rural local bodies. But sometimes they're like 14 Finance Commission. They put some riders. वो राइडर लगा देते हैं कि अगर आप ये काम करेंगे तब तो आपको सेकंड परफॉर्मेंस, you will get performance grant when you perform, and these are the parameters on which you will have to perform. So the poorest states like Bihar are unable to perform on those parameters. So we are not able to take that part of the grant. For example, I've just mentioned. तो इसलिए जो राइडर्स रहते हैं, कंडीशंस रहते हैं, उसके कारण बिहार जैसे स्टेट्स को कई बार परेशानी होती है. लेकिन मैं कुल मिलाकर ये कहूंगा कि ठीक है, पिछले 2-3 कमीशन की रिकमेंडेशंस में बिहार का शेयर कम होता जा रहा है. लेकिन फिर भी मैं ये कहूंगा कुल मिलाकर फाइनेंस कमीशन के रिकमेंडेशन से बिहार को काफी फायदा हुआ है. और मैं तो 12th फाइनेंस कमीशन से बिहार के अंदर डिप्टी सीएम रहा, और मैंने देखा कि जो भी रेवेन्यू बिहार को प्राप्त हुआ उसका हम लोगों ने काफी उपयोग किया है. अब मैं उम्मीद करता हूँ कि इस बार नंदबाबू बिहार के हैं, एंड द बिहारी पीपल आर वेटिंग, और बिहार के लोग वेट कर रहे हैं कि एनके सिंह जी इस बार के अपने रिपोर्ट के अंदर बिहार के लिए कुछ अलग से, या बिहार के लिए कैसे बिहार को ज्यादा से ज्यादा एडवांटेज मिल सके. लेकिन मैं कुल मिलाकर कहूंगा जितनी भी अभी तक फाइनेंस कमीशन की रिपोर्ट आई है, बिहार को उसका अधिकतम लाभ मिला है.
Thank you, Sushil Modi ji. One last question is addressed to all panelists, and I think it is a very important issue to raise here. The special category status tag remains an unrealized dream for Bihar, which Mr. N.K. Singh has mentioned in his book, as well as the need for it. Please share your thoughts on how you see Bihar's economic development going forward. So I would like all 3 of you to share your thoughts quickly on this issue.
So I think that the first to begin on this should be Harbansh Babu. He has not.
इसका बहुत अच्छी तरह बैकग्राउंड तो मुझे लगता है सुशील जी ने बताया ही है, और एनके सिंह जी ने अपनी पुस्तक में भी इसका उल्लेख किया है कि बिहार जैसे राज्यों को स्पेशल स्टेटस कैटेगरी की जरूरत क्यों है. और माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी बार बार कहते रहे हैं कि देश को आगे बढ़ने के लिए ईस्टर्न जोन के स्टेट्स जो पीछे रह गए, जब तक वो नहीं आगे आएंगे तब तक देश उस ढंग से आगे नहीं जा सकता. और कैसे मनमोहन सिंह जी और आप में जो संवाद हुआ इसका उल्लेख है, तो निश्चित तौर से जो स्टेट्स हिस्टोरिकली पीछे छूट गए हैं, जहां हिस्टोरिकली पर कैपिटा इनकम का बेस नीचे रहा है, इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट्स के प्रॉब्लम रहे हैं उनको शुरू से हिस्टोरिकल रीजंस की वजह से, उनके लिए कोई ना कोई अलग रास्ता निकालना ही चाहिए ताकि वो बराबर के पैरामीटर्स पर आ सके। एक बार बहुत, मैं जिस अखबार में पहले काम करता था, मैंने एक लेमैन की दृष्टि से डेवलपमेंट के बारे में एक स्टडी कराया कि अगर आज जहां महाराष्ट्र खड़ा है, दिल्ली आज जहां है, वहां पहुंचने में बिहार और उत्तर प्रदेश या झारखंड जैसे राज्यों को कितना समय लगेगा। तो पता चला कि 20 वर्षों बाद अगर इनकी प्रगति, जो डेवलपमेंट ग्रोथ रेट है, अगर उसके अनुसार होती रहे, तब भी जो दूसरे स्टेट्स में बहुत आगे चले जाएंगे। तो इस गैप को कैसे ब्रिज किया जा सकता है, मुझे लगता है एनके सिंह जैसे एक्सपर्ट्स हैं जो अंकटाड से लेकर और यहां तक नेशनल इंटरनेशनल फोरम्स पर बहुत क्रिटिकल रोल में रहे हैं। प्लानिंग कमीशन में मैं देख रहा था, 2 उनके बड़े इंपॉर्टेंट डिसीजंस, जिस तरह से मैं 3 का उल्लेख किया था वाजपेयी जी के जमाने में जिसका असर पड़ा, उसी ढंग से एफडीआई कमेटी का बनना। मतलब हमारे देश में एफडीआई को लेकर के जो साइकोलॉजिकल बैरियर था, उसको प्लानिंग कमीशन के मेंबर के रूप में कैसे एनके सिंह जी ने उसकी पॉलिसी फॉर्मुलेट कराई। पेज 205 पर इसका बहुत सुंदर डिस्क्रिप्शन है। फिर टेक्सटाइल के लिए रिवर्स पॉलिसी, फिर 212 पेज पर मैंने देखा कि न्यू इलेक्ट्रिसिटी एक्ट, वो लैंडमार्क रिफॉर्म मैं मानता हूं। इस ढंग से जो पीछे छूट गए स्टेट से, हिस्टोरिकल रीजन से, इनके लिए कुछ अलग से डेफिनेटली सोचा जाना चाहिए ताकि बिहार जैसे राज्य या उड़ीसा जैसे या और जो पीछे रह गए हैं, वो बराबर देश के जो विकसित राज्य में उनके बराबर आ सके। बाकी तो हमारे देश के जो पॉलिसी मेकर्स हैं, एक्सपर्ट्स हैं इकोनॉमिक इश्यूज के, खासतौर से दादा धर्माधिकारी एक बड़े सर्वोदय के मूवमेंट के बड़े व्यक्ति हुए, जो असल थ्योरिटिशियन मूवमेंट के माने जाते हैं, सर्वोदय आंदोलन के। तो उन्होंने एक बड़ी इंपॉर्टेंट बात कही थी, कहा कि फिलोसफर्स ने दुनिया को इंटरप्रिटेट किया कि कैसे दुनिया बदलनी चाहिए, बाकी लोगों ने उसको अलग ढंग से व्याख्या की। फिलोसफर्स हो या रिलीजन में लगे हो, ये 2 बड़े इंपॉर्टेंट हमारे जीवन के एलिमेंट्स होते थे बहुत पहले के जीवन में, मतलब 200-400 वर्षों पहले जो जिस वक्त की दुनिया थी। पर चेंज करने वाले लोग हैं वो हमारे पॉलिसी मेकर्स हैं, वो लोग फिलोसफर्स होते हैं या बाकी दूसरे लोग होते हैं। तो वो अनुभव बड़ा समृद्ध हमारे सुशील जी का भी है और माननीय एनके सिंह जी का भी है। आप दोनों बता सकते हैं कि कैसे ऐसे स्टेट्स को साथ लाने की कोशिश की जा सकती है और जो आगे बढ़ रहे हैं उनको बढ़ते देते हुए।
Thank you, Harivansh ji. Unfortunately, we have almost come to the end, and we have just 1 minute. So, would you just like to say something, N.K. Singh ji or Sushil Modi ji, your ending comments or ending remarks for this?
नहीं, मैं एक ही बात कहूँगा कि नरेंद्र मोदी has tried to give more and more to Bihar in the form of special package to Bihar of 1,20,000 crore, which includes more than 50,000 crore for the road sector. तो इसलिए जो स्पेशल पैकेज बिहार पैकेज जो दिया गया है, वो बिहार की स्पेशल नीड को देखते हुए और बिहार को मदद करने का प्रयास किया गया है।
संक्षिप्त में एक कि भारतवर्ष ने अद्भुत प्रगति की है, लेकिन अभी जो हिंदुस्तान की ग्रोथ पोटेंशियल है उसको रियलाइज करने की जो आकांक्षा प्राइम मिनिस्टर की है, उस आकांक्षा को कैसे साकार बनाया जाए, इसका संक्षिप्त रूप से मैंने अपने अंतिम चैप्टर में कुछ विषयों के ऊपर हमने ध्यान आकर्षित किया है। जहां तक बिहार का प्रश्न है, मैं संपूर्ण रूप से सहमत हूं हरवंश भाई, और धन्यवाद हरवंश भाई, जितनी गहराई से आपने शायद मेरे पुस्तक को देखा है। बहुत कम ही लोग ऐसे हैं जो इस गहराई से प्रत्येक पन्ने के ऊपर उनकी टिप्पणी है। तो मैं आभार प्रकट करता हूं हरवंश भाई कि आपने ये, मैं आपके भावना और सुशील जी के भावना से सहमत हूं। यद्यपि पिछले 15 वर्षों में बिहार के विकास के लिए बहुत प्रगति हुई है, लेकिन बिहार की जो क्षमता है, बिहार का जो लक्ष्य है और जो बिहार का सपना रहा है, उसको पूरे करने के लिए वर्तमान विकास की जो गति है और भी आने की आवश्यकता होगी, चाहे तो वो पब्लिक आउटले हो या प्राइवेट आउटले हो या दोनों के समन्वय से हो, लेकिन जो भी आकार हो उनमें इस समन्वय को एक निश्चित रूप से उसमें एक नई वृद्धि आए, ताकि एक सस्टेन्ड ग्रोथ चाहिए बिहार को। 10% पर एनम, 10 से 12% जीडीपी ग्रोथ पर एनम 10 वर्षों के लिए, और उसका अगर कंपाउंडेड आप अगर लें, ये अगर 10% पर एनम जीडीपी ग्रोथ होगी फॉर 10 years, and power of compounding, Bihar will make a big difference. Bihar infrastructure, social infrastructure, and the pride which all of us have in being a proud Bihari.
Thank you. Thank you, N.K. Singh ji. Thank you, Sushil Kumar Modi ji. Thank you, Harivansh ji. I thank all the panelists for coming and taking our time and giving your views on all the questions and being patient and hearing me out. Unfortunately, we do not have any more time to address the questions or comments, but I'm sure that panelists can see those questions and would possibly respond to them later. But I think we have to really end here, and we had a really stimulating discussion, much beyond what we were expecting. So thanks again for coming here and taking your time. Thanks a lot.